Shuro is a character introduced in the opening fight scene in Dungeon Meshi as part of the original party, a samurai-style warrior that we can only assume is the cool, flashy swordsman of the group. You know the type. But this is the first and last time we see Shuro in these early episodes, as it's immediately revealed that while Laios was busy snoozing, Shuro quit the party. Shuro is reintroduced at the midpoint of the season where, independently of Laios and Kabru's parties, Shuro's party has been searching for Falin as well, now traveling with his clan's familial retainers, a group of trained ninja and a traditional Japanese-style priestess that can summon yokai for some reason. Listen man, I'm not judging. But here's the thing, compared to Laios' party, Shuro is disheveled and exhausted. He hasn't been eating, he hasn't been sleeping, he's, well, a bit of a wreck. And in just a few episodes, he's about to become one of Dungeon Meshi's most polarizing characters. But we'll get into that. Considering his relatively short screen time, Shuro is a really interesting character in the broader scope of Dungeon Meshi. In a lot of ways, Shuro is meant to directly contrast Laios, and the most immediate way is through the main moral of this batch of episodes, through self-care. Much like directly after the first episode, Shuro is burnt out. He's neglecting his health, skipping meals and sleep, and thinking that through nobly sacrificing these things, he can power through and accomplish his goals faster. All of us that routinely pulled all-nighters to finish things due tomorrow, just nodding in agreement right now. But anyone can tell you that in the long run, shirking your health is bound to have consequences. And in this little Shuro reunion arc, we see why Laios' team is so uniquely qualified for this dungeon. Shuro's squad might be more capable fighters than most of Laios' party, sure, but neglecting proper food and sleep was the exact same reason they lost against the Red Dragon to begin with. And now Shuro's doubling down on making that same mistake. Laios, on the other hand, has learned from the Red Dragon fight that traversing the dungeon is a marathon, not a sprint, and through eating properly and getting quality sleep, his party is bound to outpace Shuro's. And speaking of quality sleep, this video is brought to you by today's sponsor, Manta Sleep. Manta Sleep make premium quality sleep masks with breathable, lightweight material and fully customizable parts for no eye pressure and maximum comfort. Manta Sleep were kind enough to send me their Manta Sound mask, and it's been such a great addition to my nightly routine. I like to fall asleep to background noise like podcasts and video essays, so with the Manta Sleep sound, I can peacefully fall asleep to a 3-hour Chrono Cross retrospective without annoying my girlfriend. Manta Sleep have a full range of masks for whatever sleep needs you may have, so cast a sleep spell on yourself this summer and use the code PUNK for 10% off your order. Thanks again to Manta Sleep, and now let's get back to the video. Laios is, up until this point, the template of what a human or tall man is supposed to be. But Laios, as we've covered on the channel here, is probably the worst example of a template for the average person, like maybe ever. In comparison, the reserved and level-headed Shuro seems, well, normal. Shuro's origin is very clearly based on feudal Japan, with his entire party falling in line with traditional Japanese nobility, with retainers, vassals, servants, all in service to their young lord. The reintroduction to Shuro as Toshiro Nakamoto is our first hint that maybe the swordsman is more than just a fighter, and maybe there's more to tall man society than what we've seen up until this point in the story. And hilariously, the main cast of characters is kind of also learning this in real time. Toshiro's background, his family lineage, his real name, these are all things that they'd never even bothered to ask, even after years of adventuring together. Delicious in Dungeon handles fantasy races with a great amount of nuance and insight, from the painful what-if of being a half-elf, to the suggested conflicts between dwarves and elves, to gnomes having their own subset of magic separate from elves, to orcs having their own difficult relations with the humanoid races that displace them. Ryoko Kui's writing takes what we assume about these fantasy races and then goes a step further, being unafraid to ask some real, weighty world-building questions. What if the tropes we're familiar with worked differently in this story? The Nakamoto clan is introduced because obviously not all tall men are the same. Laios and Falin are one incredibly specific type of northern tall man, with Shuro and even Kabru being completely different, having their own customs, their own manner of speaking, their own preconceptions and biases about this world that inform who they are. With the Nakamoto family, Dungeon Meshi touches on traditional feudal Japan style and how this kind of character would clash with the rest of the cast. A lot of Shuro's personality likely stems from this traditional regal upbringing. The young lord is reserved, indirect, and concerned with coming across as impolite, but he also expects that of others. As Laios and the rest of the party reunite with Shuro, Maizuru is mortified to see how casually they refer to Lord Toshiro. There's a distinct lack of respect that, from these different culture norms, seems borderline offensive. There's also the fact that Laios has gotten his name wrong the entire time, and Shuro is just too non-confrontative to ever bring it up, which just says so much about his character without even saying a word. This almost serves as a little tongue-in-cheek commentary on Eastern versus Western customs, with Westerners typically being far more brash and impolite and almost oblivious to the rest of the world around them. I can say that, I'm Canadian, everyone loves us. And while Ryoko Kui plays it out for a bit of a joke, like most things in Dungeon Meshi, it comes from a real place. While Shuro never tells Laios to shut up directly, he gives him the anime fantasy equivalent of 8 "that's crazies" in a row when Laios tells him stories of eating monsters and slaying dragons. Dude is just not interested. Compare this to Kabru still excitedly asking Laios about his interests, hiding his severe judgment under some playful banter. Kabru, Shuro, and Laios could not be more polar opposites of social interaction. It's a real 3-point Venn diagram where the only overlap they have in common is their current adventure. This introduction of an Eastern Tallman region is a really fun bit of world building because it expands on what we only knew as a single island melting pot into distinct Tallman islands, the Japanese-style Eastern regions, and the more Nordic European-style Northern islands. And there's a lot of differences even if they aren't outright stated. Just look at Falin's magic compared to Rin's, or Laios' scrappy combat style compared to Shuro's precise swordsmanship. You see, Shuro's a samurai not out of randomness, but as an ode to one of wizardry's advanced classes, implying right away that Shuro is one of the more elite fighters we've seen up until now. In wizardry, samurai are leveled up versions of a standard fighter, only unlockable upon reaching certain stat requirements. Samurais have crits that deal insta-kills, much like we saw with the sea serpent, and they can also cast from a small selection of magic. Whether or not Shuro can do that remains to be seen. Samurai and ninja are both advanced classes for fighters and thieves respectively, and so it kinda makes sense why Shuro's group seems so capable compared to Laios and Kabru's ragtag groups. Shuro's retainers have essentially taxied the exhausted man through the dungeon at a pace to catch up with Laios after all, implying the group is quite powerful compared to most. All of Shuro's retainers have code names, which generally fall into a few distinct categories. All of them are named after plants and flowers as a theme, but there's actually layers to this as well. Maizuru, Hien, and Benichidori are all names of beautiful flowers, but have a secondary meaning of birds, while Inutade and Asabi are in comparison a weed and a poisonous flower, a very clear distinction that marks them still as outsiders, a clear rank below the Nakamoto retainers. And hilariously, the name Shuro is a type of tree itself, meaning that Laios mistakenly calling the young Lord Toshiro a name his family would give to servants, yeah, that probably wasn't doing wonders for their relationship. Which leads us to the slap. Shuro's disdain for Laios is maybe the most controversial character writing in Dungeon Meshi up until this point, but at the risk of sounding unsympathetic, I kinda get it. In my first watch, I had a bit of a conflicting view of Laios. As funny and dynamic of a character he is, he's also routinely frustrating, not just to the main cast, but also as a viewer. But that's like kind of the point. Laios himself is polarizing as a character, and just because you find him hilarious or relatable doesn't necessarily mean that how he goes about things or treats people is the right way. But from Laios' point of view, Shuro was his first real friend. And, well, to Shuro, Laios was someone he loathed being around. And this kind of social misinteraction, a complete misread of a relationship, is probably a real, genuine social anxiety nightmare to most people, especially if Laios is who you related to at this point in the story. And it makes Shuro feel quite antagonistic compared to everyone that puts up with Laios, but never really confronts him in the same way. But the real dichotomy of Shuro's dislike of Laios comes for his love of Falin. Falin is by all means the exact same person as her brother, sharing the enthusiasm for his silly interests, his love of little critters, lack of social cues, etc. But Shuro isn't really interested in that. For some reason, he's willing to look past all of that and propose to Falin, having barely interacted with her, just off the basis of who she is. And yet, who Laios is drives him insane. Why is that? All the reasons Shuro can't stand Laios, he sees as some sort of quirked up, manic pixie dream girl type shit in Falin. There's a lot to be said for neurodivergence presenting itself differently in men and women, and there really is a phenomenon about romanticizing these traits in women, but despising them in men. But this goes both ways, with women having a real tough time getting a proper diagnosis for basically anything mental health related, because the template has always been how these things present themselves in men. Women suffer in silence because their very real problems are just dismissed or hand-waved as cute little quirks. Or hysteria, one or the other. Shuro's paradox with the Toden siblings is a commentary on just that a sexist bias does exist. People do inherently treat men and women differently, even if it's for the exact same thing. And I'll admit, if it's not that deep and it's just a bit that Shuro's totally oblivious, it's still a pretty good bit. Maybe Shuro's most revealing moment to who he is, to what he believes, comes in the quiet moments after the fight, where he admits that in a way, he's sort of always been envious of Laios. And it makes sense. Imagine being the heir to a royal family, unable to explore your own interests or be your own person. You're just the lord of the Nakamoto bloodline, and everything you do is what is expected of you. To borrow a phrase, Laios is cringe, but he is free, and Shuro is the furthest thing from it, trapped under all the crushing weight of expectation, of being a noble, of being who he views as the only person capable of saving Falin. At least until the fight, because through that fight, Laios standing up to him for what he believes in, Shuro realizes that Laios' conviction is just as strong, if not stronger, than his. That Laios, as much of a geek as he might be, is heading towards the right path. Shuro realizes he can trust in Laios, and for a guy like him, that's all he needs to say. Thank you guys so much for checking out the video. If you're still here, hopefully that means you liked it, so leave a like and a comment so I know that you did. I also have a ton of other Delicious in Dungeon videos, so go check those out if you feel like it as well. A big thank you to my patrons over on Patreon and my YouTube channel members. Your support really means the world to me and keeps letting me do this whole YouTube thing. If you'd like to help out the channel and get a whole bunch of extra content, including my first watch and read of Delicious in Dungeon, my first read of Which Had Atelier, and many more to come, you can check out my Patreon. The names of my patrons are on screen right now, and I appreciate you guys so much. So yeah, thank you guys so much. I've been Dom, this has been Shuro, and until next time.